Hi everyone, it's Dr. Melissa Corso here again, and this presentation we're going to go over is the Athlete's Guide to Nutrition. So by the end of this presentation, you should know what the main components of your diet should be, how much to eat, what to eat and when to eat it, the importance of hydration, how to calculate portion sizes, and some examples of healthy snacks and meals that you can use throughout the week. So, I want to start by talking about the diet pyramid, and this is because as athletes, you often hear a lot about maybe different supplements or things you can do to become better at your sport or perform better. And while that is part of the diet pyramid, it's not the main component. The main component that you should be focusing on is your daily nutrition. These are the things that you're doing every single day, every hour to fuel your body, and this is going to have a greater impact on your performance than supplements will or even sport supplements will. Any type of supplement is really there to do what it's called, and that is to supplement your daily nutrition. And this is usually the case when you're unable to get enough of the components from your diet through your daily meals, and that's when you start adding the supplements. So my focus today is going to be on your daily nutrition and how you can take advantage of that. So as I mentioned, proper nutrition ensures that an athlete is getting the necessary fuels for energy that is related to activity and recovery. And so this is where we're related to the previous presentation where we talked about the athlete's guide to recovery. So recovery isn't just the sleep, isn't just hydration. There's nutrition involved as well. It's not just about recovery in terms of taking rest like we sometimes think it is. Okay, so just remember that your proper nutrition, your daily nutrition, is a fundamental component of your training and your performance plan. So your daily nutrition is broken into three main components. You have your carbohydrates, okay? And your carbohydrates is the primary source of fuel or energy for your body, especially during moderate and high intensity exercise. So that's going to be your more intense training sessions as well as your games or tournaments. Your carbohydrates are stored in the blood. This is what is being used to kind of keep your energy up and make sure all the basic functions of your body happen. But when it comes to sport and performance, the main stores that you're using are the ones that are in the muscles. And so research shows that you produce greater power, so more strength over time during exercise when your carbohydrate stores in the muscle are high, as well as when you give your body extra carbohydrates. So that might be with like a sports drink or a granola bar to keep your energy high when you're training or playing. As these carbohydrate stores decrease, the ability to maintain exercise at a high intensity and maintain that same level over time will decrease. So this is why carbohydrates are so important. The second component of your daily nutrition is protein, and this is what helps keep your muscles strong. It also helps with recovery, and so that feeling of soreness that you might have after a training session or a workout, protein is going to help take advantage of that and make your muscles stronger so that they get bigger and they're able to produce more strength over time. Protein, as we know, is going to be important after training to take advantage of the stimulus that training provides. The last component is fat, and this is a major component of our diet, but because it's so readily available in many different foods, we don't actually focus on it very much. However, it can be a source of fuel or energy if it needs to be, but very often for athletes in your situation, it's not a main source of energy. Okay, so what to eat and when to eat it. This is just general recommendations throughout the day. And once this is done in a couple slides, we'll talk about what to eat around competition or games. Okay, but what's important on a regular day is that you eat breakfast to get your metabolism started. So your metabolism is your how your body uses energy, okay? And you want to get that kick started in the morning, and you do that by having breakfast within an hour of waking up in the morning. It's also important to spread out your meals throughout the day so that your blood energy levels kind of stay equal throughout the day. You're not getting spikes up and down. And regularly spreading out your meals can help make you feel less hungry or have, crazy appetites and then very low appetite. It helps kind of level out these feelings, okay? It also helps to keep the calories or energy equal throughout the day, and especially protein. If you keep protein intake, so eating protein every 3 hours, it actually helps your body make muscle stronger. And so you should be having about 20 grams every 3 hours, either in meals or in snacks, to take advantage of that. And so, as an athlete, of course, you want your muscles to be strong and for your muscles to be able to recover. In terms of your last meal, it should be within 3 hours of going to sleep. Okay. Um, it can be closer than 3 hours, but at least, at most 3 hours before going to sleep. And having a snack that is high in protein before bed can again help your muscles recover and help your metabolism work throughout the night to help your body recover. Now, as a youth or adolescent athlete, there are two main micronutrients that are really important for you. Micronutrients are basically like vitamins or minerals that your body needs to function adequately and that are really important for certain functions. So the first is calcium. Okay, I added vitamin D because vitamin D helps absorb calcium, so it helps make it more. Helps your body take more in if you take calcium and vitamin D together. And this is really important for bone growth. As you know, in your teenage years, you go through growth spurts, and this results in a huge growth in bone. And you need to be able to have enough calcium to make that bone strong. So you want about 1,300 milligrams per day. And again, trying to get this through your whole foods. So this can be things like milk, fortified orange juice, almonds, broccoli, yogurts, those types of foods, okay? The second is iron, and again, I added vitamin C for the same reason as vitamin D is there. And this is for cardiovascular and blood function. So again, your body's going through a lot of changes. You want to make sure that in systems where a lot of growth or change is happening, you're providing enough of these micronutrients for these changes to happen optimally. Okay, so if you're under 13 years old, you should be getting 18 milligrams per day. And if you're over 14, you should have somewhere between 11 to 15 milligrams per day. Again, trying not to get this through supplementation. You're looking for foods like lean red meats, beans, green vegetables, peanuts, or dried fruits. Okay, so now we're going to talk about competition or games, even training. So the best way to do this is to really do it consistently, again, focusing on that daily nutrition. And by doing that, you ensure that you're constantly well fueled. So think of that as you're constantly topping up your gas tank so you never get to empty. When you get to empty, it's almost too late. It takes more time to fill it up than if you're just filling it up slowly over, little bits and pieces at a time. So we'll start with before a game, okay, a competition or a practice. And it's recommended to consume a snack or a meal that's high in carbohydrate about 3 hours before. any high intensity exercise that's longer than 90 minutes. So that's most practices in most games. Okay, specifically, you're looking at 10 to 14 grams per kilogram. Again, a reference number here, and I'll show you a file that will give you the calculations here. Okay. Now, what's important about this meal or snack that's high in carbohydrate before your game is that it's even more important if you've been having small amounts of carbohydrates in the days leading up to the competition, or if you had inadequate amounts of rest and recovery. So let's say you've been training really hard, you haven't had enough sleep, you haven't been eating properly. These meals or snacks that are high in carbohydrates before a game are really important to help keep those energy levels high. This is also really important in situations like a tournament where you have multiple games in one day, and then you also will have subsequent games, like let's say the next day. You can also add protein if you want as part of this meal. It doesn't have to just be carbohydrates because adding the protein will also help with muscle recovery afterwards, and it doesn't impact the effect of the carbohydrates before. Some important things that you want to avoid would be high fat meals before exercise because they can make you feel sluggish, they can slow down and have a negative effect on your performance. And you also want to focus on drinking lots of water. So about 4 hours prior to exercise, you want 5 to 7 milliliters per kilogram of water. Again, we'll have the nutrition calculator to tell you how much you actually need there. Now, I often get asked what happens if it's a tournament and you have an early morning game, or maybe your games are usually scheduled early in the morning. Okay. So you can't necessarily have that high carbohydrate meal 3 to 4 hours before the game. You're not awake. Sleep, remember from our recovery presentation, is really important. So you want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. What you can do is have a snack or a liquid meal about 1 to 2 hours before the event. So that would be something like fresh or dried fruit, a bowl of cereal with milk, juice or fruit-based smoothies. Okay, you have something like that about 1 to 2 hours before the event, and then afterwards you have a full breakfast, and that's where you can get load up on the carbohydrates and protein to make sure you're refueling for energy as well as getting the protein for recovery. Now, during competition, practices, or tournaments, it's really important for you to stay hydrated, but it's also important, as I mentioned in a previous slide, to provide carbohydrates during exercise because this can help improve performance. If you're providing your body with carbohydrates, it doesn't have to use the muscle stores. If it doesn't have to use the muscle stores of energy, these stay higher, you don't feel as tired. Okay, so this would be something like a sports drink or even a granola bar or something with carbohydrates that you can have at halftime. And this helps to keep your carbohydrates in your blood high. And again, you don't have to use your energy stores. By doing this, you have more energy and you don't feel as tired. That feeling of jello in your muscles. It's also important to keep drinking water when you can to try and reduce the effect of water loss through sweat. Now, afterwards, there are 2 things that you want to focus on. The first is refueling your body. So you had a long, over 90 minutes or more, intense bout of exercise, and you used some of those energy stores in your muscles and your blood, and you need to make sure you fill those back up again. And there's this really cool window right after exercise that lasts about 30 minutes where your body just soaks up all of the carbohydrates, all the energy. It's more sensitive to that. And so if you take advantage of that 30 minutes, you can restore those muscle energy stores faster. Now, taking advantage of that window sometimes is difficult, but it's most important when you really need to quickly replenish those muscle stores of energy. So that might be a situation where you have a game the next day, or you're in a tournament, you have a game later. Making sure that you have something ready right after the game is really important. Or if you haven't been having enough carbohydrate throughout your daily nutrition and you really need to keep up those energy stores. So there are two options that you can do. Your first option is having smaller snacks, again starting at 30 minutes and then continuing these smaller snacks every 2 hours for 4 to 6 hours. That would depend again on, let's say, if you had a tournament, that's probably not the best way to do it because you don't have enough time. But if you had a game the next day, that would be possible. Or you could have a larger carbohydrate snack and have that within 3 hours of your exercise. The second thing that's really important is protein. And I mentioned that protein is there to make your muscles stronger and help you recover. And so you want to make sure that you're getting enough protein after you're exercising to promote the building of the muscle and making sure that that soreness that you're feeling the next day, you have enough building blocks to make those muscles stronger. The last thing, of course, is drinking enough water to replenish your the water that was lost during your activity. This is particularly important in the summer when there are really hot and humid days and you're losing a lot of sweat. So as I mentioned, I have a athlete nutrition calculator. Okay, it's an Excel sheet, and there's a link to get to this in the description of the video, so you can find it there or on my website. Now, this is what the first half looks like, okay? So at the top, you just see that this is the nutrition detailed sheet, and you have these bright yellow cells. And this is what you need to fill in. So you fill in your name, your age, and your weight in pounds. The weight in pounds is really important because that's going to allow this file to calculate exactly how much protein you need, carbohydrates you need, how much you need to be eating, and so on. You also need to look at your daily caloric requirement, okay? And I have a little trail of arrows that's going over to the right side of your screen, and there's a table here that's according to the World Health Organization. According to your age, how many calories you need to be eating every day. So you just pick your age, 12 to 13, let's say. Are you a boy? Are you a girl? And that's how many calories you should be aiming for every day. Once you put your weight in pounds and the daily caloric requirement, that should be it. You should be able to go through this document, and here I've just highlighted the areas. You should be able to go through the document and print it out and know exactly how much you should be eating and aiming for throughout the day. I've also included other references that I mentioned, like calcium and iron, okay? And if we go to the next slide here, we're also looking at game day recommendations. So what you should be eating 3 to 4 hours before, how much water you should be drinking, and what you should be doing during the competition, after the competition. So all of this information is there for you, and then you can print it out. You and your parents can look at it and have a plan for what your nutrition is going to look like, okay? I mentioned hydration a little bit, but here's more information. So as I mentioned, when you're working really hard in a hot and humid environment, this is where you're going to be losing the most amount of sweat. And when you lose sweat, you lose water. So in those situations, that's when you really need to focus on aggressively drinking water, as well as those carbohydrate drinks to keep your energy high. Carbohydrate drinks could be sports drinks. You're looking for 6 to 8%, okay? And about 1.5 to 2 cups is probably sufficient for that sports drink, or like a watered down juice. You want to make sure that you're hydrating before the activity, so about 4 hours before, you have 5 to 7 milliliters per kilogram. This calculation is part of that Excel sheet. And you also want to have about 1 to 2 liters after to make sure you're replenishing this water. Usually what I tell people, you don't really need the calculation for this one. I just want you to drink to thirst. So drinking as much as you need to until you don't feel thirsty anymore. So here we're looking at portion sizes, and the reason I included this here is because we talk about grams of protein, grams of carbohydrates, and it's really hard to determine exactly what that is. And so this gives us a good idea. You're gonna have your nutrition calculator sheet. You print that off, look how much protein you need, look how much carbohydrates you need, and then you come back to this picture here and compare it to that. So let's say I mentioned having protein snacks every 3 hours throughout the day at about 20 grams. So if you look at this, your palm, and this is an adult palm, so it's difficult for teenagers. Maybe you have, depending how old you are, you look at 2 palms. But that's about 25 grams of protein. So that gives you a good idea of how much protein you're eating. Same thing for carbohydrates. And having an idea of 15 grams of fat, a serving of vegetables. So these are just quick ways to check how much you should be eating. And you can also, Google portion sizes and see kind of what comes up and how much that is if you want more information on that. Okay, so here we're looking at different examples of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Here I have a healthy fat, so it's important to remember fats are not created equal. Some are good or better for you, some are not as good for you. So here we're focusing, of course, on healthy fats because your body does need fat to function, okay? So examples of good carbohydrates include fruit, oatmeal, starchy vegetables like sweet or white potatoes, squash, non-starchy vegetables like broccoli or leafy greens, whole grain breads or crackers, high fiber, non-sugary cereals. So we're not looking at like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but there are some cereals that are high in fiber, low sugar that are good for you to eat. Quinoa or brown or wild rice. So one easy way to take carbohydrates and think of a healthier version is looking at like white bread versus brown bread, whole wheat versus that starchy processed version. So the whole grain or the brown rice, those are going to be healthier than like the white bread or the white rice. In terms of protein, you have whole eggs, so that includes the yolk as part of that. There's Greek yogurt, milk, cheese, lean red meats, so again, trying to limit the amount of fat that you're getting through your meats. Poultry, so that's your chicken. Fish, hummus, beans, tofu are all good sources of protein. And your healthy fats, avocado, peanut butter, nuts and seeds. So these are all really great snacks that you can include. And things like the nuts and seeds, peanut butter also have protein in it. So you can combine that with maybe other sources of protein or other carbohydrates and make snacks that are easy to take with you to the field. And so you can have them right after you're playing. Again, from the carbohydrate standpoint and snacks, we're looking at oatmeal. It's not easy to bring, but are there granola bars that you can bring? And again, you're looking at oats, and that's, oatmeal in a different form. So that's kind of one way to get your carbohydrates right after you're playing. Now, going back to the nutrition pyramid, that was all kind of the quick overview of your daily nutrition, and the rest of the pyramid is supplements and sports supplements. And so at your age, as a teenager, as a developing adolescent athlete, it is recommended that all your nutritional requirements, including the micronutrients, so that's your calcium, that's your iron, should be consumed through whole foods. That means your diet. We're not looking to supplement. However, supplementation might be important in certain situations. Let's say you're very deficient and you're not getting enough through your food, or you have a dietary restriction and you can't eat something. That might be a situation where supplementation is appropriate for you, but in general, it is not recommended for youth or adolescent athletes. If you are interested in discussing supplements or sports supplements any further, we can definitely do that, but on an individual basis. And my recommendations regarding sports supplements are just based on research. So making sure that if you are taking something, it's something that's been shown to be effective and safe being the most important thing. So in summary, when you're looking at that nutrition pyramid, you want to focus on daily nutrition. This will have the biggest impact on your performance. The three main things you want to focus on are your carbohydrates for energy, your protein for your muscle strength and recovery, and hydration. These three things are important for your performance. They will help provide energy, they will help you recover, they will help you stay in your peak condition to perform, but they also help you recover by making sure that your body has the nutrients, the energy, the fuel it needs to do the activities that you're doing, as well as recover and reduce the risk of injury. Calcium and iron are important for growth and development. So again, calcium for your bone health, iron for your blood levels, and taking vitamin D and vitamin C can help in absorbing and making this process more efficient. Fuel appropriately on competition days. So that's the one slide looking at what do you eat and when do you eat it before, during, and after a competition. Like a game, but it can be very important since you're training so often to also do this around practices, and it also gets you in a routine. And the last thing is don't just look at this and say, hey, cool. If you're really interested in changing your nutrition, it does take a lot of effort. So I have a link in the YouTube video description here for you to go to my website and download the nutrition calculator. All you have to do is fill in your name, your weight, and your daily caloric requirement. And the sheet does all the calculations for you. You can print it off, and then you know how much you should be eating every day and around games and tournaments. And just remembering, nutrition is a really hard thing. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time, and it takes a long time to change and become good at it. So just keep with it. Work with your parents, work with your friends, and challenge each other to make an effort to change these things. And it could just be changing one meal or one snack per day, and doing this over time. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions or you want more information on nutrition, supplements, or anything that I presented on, just get in touch with me either by email, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and I will be happy to help. Okay, so how much to eat? This is a great question, and particularly in youth and adolescent athletes, you need to consider the fact that you're also growing and developing. So you're not just sitting on the couch. So someone who sits on the couch doesn't need to eat as much as someone who is up and about, moving and exercising. A grown-up doesn't need to maybe eat as much as a teenager who's growing and active. So it's really important that you get enough energy from your food. Because low energy availability, so not eating enough calories, can actually lead to a large number of health consequences. So this might mean delayed puberty. So puberty is really important because you get hormones that kind of surge and help your body change into a more mature body that is stronger, taller, able to build more muscle. In females, you might have menstrual irregularities, but in both girls and boys, if you don't have enough calories, it can lead to poor bone health, short stature, so maybe limiting your growth. You might develop disordered eating behaviors, and there's also an increased risk of injuries because your body needs these calories in order to recover, get stronger, and meet the demand of the activities that you're doing. In terms of carbohydrates, you need about 8 to 10 grams per kilogram per day. And these numbers are here as a reference. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to direct you to a file where you can, where the calculations are going to be done for you, and you can figure out exactly how much of these things you should be eating per day. But this is important for athletes training at moderate to high intensity activity for over 12 hours per week. And for you OPDL players, you definitely fall into this category. So it's really important that you're getting enough carbohydrates. Again, remembering that your body uses this as fuel, as energy to help maintain the activities that you do. As a general rule, if your calorie need increases as a adolescent or youth athlete, carbohydrates should be what you increase to account for that. So at least 50% of your diet should be carbohydrates. In terms of protein, the recommendation in a regular population is lower than for athletes. So the recommendation for athletes is 1.4 to 1.8 grams per kilogram per day. And as I mentioned, you shouldn't be getting this through the use of supplements. You should be getting this through the use of whole foods. So this is going to be your chicken, your red meats, your fish, eggs, beans, tofu. Okay, those are sources of protein. Again, not trying to get these through any supplementation if possible. And as I mentioned, fats, we don't really track these, but it is recommended that less than 30% of all your calories come from fat, as if you have more than that, it might lead to more fat stores being held in your body. And of course, as an athlete who is trying to increase their performance, that might be detrimental to you.